others as they come in. All right, so in the meantime, whether you're joining us on YouTube, on Facebook, or here on the Zoom call, please just introduce yourself in the chat or in the comment section. Tell us your name, where you're joining us from, and one word that comes to mind when you think of innovation in mining. So again, I'll repeat that. Tell us your name, where you're joining us from, and one word that comes to mind when you think of innovation in mining. And I'm looking forward to seeing those answers and seeing who's with us today on this call. Right, I can still see people are still settling in. If you're joining us, if you're just joining us, welcome. Thank you for joining us for this exciting webinar, one of many. Please, as you join us, tell us your name, where you're joining us from, and one word that comes to mind when you think of innovation in mining. As we wait for more people to join, let's engage in the chat. I'm looking forward to seeing your answers and engaging with you as well. All right, thank you, Midenda Miemba from West. I'm joining from Ndola, Zambia. One word to describe innovation in mining is evolving. Yes, absolutely. Innovation in mining is evolving. And we'll be getting a bit more context and examples as we have our discussion today. So we have also Brian Musonda joining from Lusaka. The word that comes to mind is automation. Absolutely. Thank you, Brian. Thank you. All right, so I see there's a lot more people in the chat. Don't feel shy. Please interact. Part of this webinar and these engagements are also to bring together the whole mining ecosystem, get to know each other, who are the different players in the ecosystem. So please introduce yourself. Feel free to also tell us as well if you are currently working on a MineTech related startup or project. Feel free to also drop that in the chat, in the comment section. Let us know and let us know how to get in touch with you or follow up also. Okay, so please tell us your name, where you're joining from, one word that comes to mind when you think of innovation, and if you're working on anything exciting or thinking of working on anything exciting in the mining sector, please tell us a bit about it in the chat, in the comment section. We're really eager to hear from you. Okay. All right, thank you, Carol. Joining from Johannesburg, one word about mining. When you think about innovation in mining, you think safety. Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting. That's really, really interesting. Thank you, Carol, and welcome. Nice to see someone from Johannesburg joining. Thank you. Anyone working on any MineTech related startups or projects? We'd like to hear from you. Just drop that. You don't need to give us too much detail if you don't feel like it, but what would just be great to hear any exciting projects, any exciting startups in the MineTech sector. Jemima from Lusaka, integrated mining with ESG focus. That's exciting. I'm building a system to promote smart mining and inclusion. That's beautiful. Thank you, Jemima, for sharing your project as well. So anyone that's also interested in that, there you have it. Jemima is building a system to promote smart mining and inclusion. Thank you so much for sharing. Okay. I can see we've got a lot more people joining us. We will be starting shortly. We'll give it another 1 or 2 minutes, and then we'll get started. Okay, Brian here. I would like to work on an online platform connecting small miners with buyers directly, cutting out middlemen. This will streamline trade and increase transparency in the mining supply chain. Thank you, Brian. Yes, I do know that is quite a challenge and very much needed. So well done. Thank you for sharing that really exciting project and startup, and all the best. Okay. All right. So thank you so much for those of us that are still joining. Thank you for joining us. You're welcome. We will get started in 2 minutes at 10 minutes past 6. In the meantime, if you're just joining us, tell us your name in the chat, in the comment section, where you're joining us from, and one word that comes to mind when you think of innovation in mining. And if you're also currently working on any MineTech related startup or project, please, feel free to also share that with us in the chat, in the comment section. Mariah, do you have visibility of the comments on YouTube, on Facebook? Because I do know some people are joining us from there as well. Welcome to those joining us on Facebook, YouTube. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, I'll be able to put their comments down for you to read.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so from Midenda, I'm working on a system that helps keep track. Okay, I think you were cut off there, Midenda. Looking forward to seeing the end of that. Lowani, joining in from Calgary, welcome. Thank you for joining us. The word is digitization, focus on data-driven mining. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lowani. Thank you. I love that. Data-driven mining. Lucky Mumba joining from Lusaka. One word that comes to mind is simplicity. Okay. All right. That's new. That's interesting. Thank you for sharing. Okay. So we've got 1 minute before we open up. Thank you so much. For those of you that are still joining us, feel free, even as we start with the webinar, please go ahead and continue to introduce yourselves. Continue to tell us your name, where you're joining from, one word that comes to mind when you think of innovation in mining. And if you're working on any exciting projects or startups in the mining sector, feel free to also continue to share that with us. And we'll make sure to call that out as we continue with the conversation. All right, so as I promised, it is 10 minutes past 6 p.m. So we are going to get started with the webinar. Okay, so we are going to get started with the webinar. So thank you so much for joining us. Okay, so this webinar is one of 3 webinars that is being hosted for the regional mining ecosystem under the Timbuktu MineTech program funded by UNDP, hosted by the National Institute for Scientific and Industrial Research here in Zambia, and implemented by Bongo Hive. So the purpose of these webinars is to not only support the development of the nascent regional MineTech sector, but also from a startup perspective, but also to help existing and potential MineTech startups across the region to better position themselves for success through knowledge sharing, investor readiness, and strategic collaboration. So good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us, everyone. Welcome to our first session, and this one is titled Navigating the African MineTech Funding Landscape. All right, so today's discussion will focus on one critical question, which is our central question for this webinar. How can innovators secure the capital and strategic partnerships needed to thrive in transforming Africa's MineTech sector? So I'll repeat that. Our central question for this webinar is how can innovators secure the capital and strategic partnerships needed to thrive in transforming Africa's mining sector? And to explore this topic, we're joined by two distinguished speakers. Our first one is Mr. Luatula Mulumba, who will be sharing from a strategic view from the Industrial Development Corporation here based in Zambia. Mulumba, I'll allow you to wave and just say a few words introducing yourself, what you do as well. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Momo, and good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to everyone. My name is Mulumba Luatula. I am Head of Investments, Mining and Energy at the Industrial Development Corporation, also known as the IDC. The IDC is the Zambian government's investment holding entity with a triple mandate. The first is of which to superintend of what we call formerly state-owned enterprises. I'm sure some of them you're quite familiar with. There's Zanaco, Zamtel, Zesco, ZCCM, and a few others. Our portfolio size spans 36 companies, spanning 12 different sectors of the economy. So we're quite a large conglomerate in the Zambian economic space. Our secondary mandate is that of catalyzing investments in what have been deemed as priority sectors by the government, obviously mining being one of those, as well as energy, tourism, infrastructure, agriculture, and manufacturing. As of last year, we added a third pillar, and that is of setting up a wealth fund, obviously to ensure that future generations of this country can also benefit from the natural resource wealth that also includes the mineral wealth that the country holds. With those few words, I'll pass it on, and yeah, looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Mulumba. Thank you so much. All right, and our next speaker for the evening is Mr. Henry Sampa, who's bringing the investment manager's lens to the conversation from ZCCMIH, and he will let us know what those letters stand for. So Henry, thank you so much for joining us. Please go ahead and introduce yourself and just say a few words about what you do and who you are.
Thank you, Malmo, and the team from Bongo Hive. Good evening to everybody on this call. My name is Henry Sampa. I'm currently the investment manager at ZCCMIH, and I look after the portfolio of the precious metals and minerals within the overall portfolio of the company. For those of you who might not know what ZCCM Investment Holdings is or does, ZCCMIH is government's primary investment arm in the mining sector. And basically, ZCCMIH was born out of Zambia Consolidated Copper Mines, which was a conglomerate that operated in Zambia from state-owned mining conglomerate that operated in Zambia from around the 70s up to around 2000, when government decided to divest majority of its interests in the copper mining sector and allow for private sector players to come in and essentially recapitalize a lot of these assets. So ZCCM from that time basically managed government's minority stake in the various mining assets. Most of those were concentrated around copper, but over time we've since diversified into other mining minerals, such as the precious metals I've referred to earlier, as well as energy as well.
All right. Thank you so much, Henry. And I do see that your video is stuck. Mariah, please just confirm. Not sure if it's me. Okay, all right. So we've got you back. Thank you so much for your introduction and for sharing a bit more about ZCCMIH and what you do as well. All right, so we will now get into the meat of things with no delay. So let's ground this discussion in where mining and technology intersect right now. So this question goes to both speakers. I will start with I will start with Mulumba. And Mulumba, please let us know what excites you the most about the intersection of technology and mining in Africa today.
Sure, thanks for that. I think a lot of things excite me about the intersection of technology and mining today on the continent. I've just come out of a summit in London at the Financial Times that obviously was focusing on mining. This week as well is what is called LME Week in London, which is one of the mining industry's largest sort of gatherings, right? Where you have all of the executives from all the big mining houses globally converging on London. And obviously, this is where a lot of the deals are also made. But I think in terms of what excites me is that, Africa sits at an intersection of two global shifts, right? The first is the demand for critical minerals and the push for responsible tech-enabled operations. For decades, mining has been resource intensive, but now digital tools, automation, as well as ESG-driven innovation are reframing mining as a driver for sustainable industrialization. For Zambia, and in particular, the Copper Belt, this is about positioning our resources not just as commodities, but as platforms for new technology ecosystems, as well as projects that can be effectively run between DRC and Zambia. I know that the Zambian government, for instance, has entered into a partnership with the DRC government to set up a special economic zone to develop battery precursors. This is obviously in recognition of the fact that between the two countries, we produce a lot of the metals and minerals that go into battery production. The global, I mean, there's a global shift obviously towards an energy transition to cleaner technologies as well as cleaner energy supply. But all of that clean energy as well is going to be largely driven by a lot of the minerals that come out of Zambia and DRC. So I think this presents us with a really unique opportunity and probably a once in a lifetime opportunity for us to not only drive some of that innovation, but also for entities, especially startups that are interested in the mining sector to also then participate in this global transition.
All right, thank you so much, Mulumba, even just for highlighting the exciting opportunities from both countries, Zambia and DRC. And this webinar is a regional webinar, and even our MineTech program is also regional. So we're focusing also on startups, not just focusing on their own countries, but how they can make a difference and a change across the region. And I love keyword here is the driver for sustainable industrialization. So thank you for mentioning those. So Henry, same question to you. What excites you most about the intersection of technology and mining in Africa today? Oh, okay. I see Henry has just dropped off. So Lumba, I guess you're our our lucky contestant here. So we'll stick with you. And we'll just maybe quickly move on to the next question while we wait for him to get back on. So maybe you could also share. Okay, I see Henry's back. Henry, please confirm that you can hear me and you are ready to speak, and I can repeat the question. Okay, all right. Okay, so Mulumba, let's get to you, and then I'll move back to Henry. So, so from your high level perspective, what do you think is one challenge in mining technology that is in mining that technology is best positioned to solve right now?
Sure. Thank you for that question.
Hi, sorry, I seem to have dropped off. Could you just repeat it?
Okay, all right. Okay, so Lumba, thank you for being willing to jump in there. Henry, we'll go back to you. So the question here was just to open up and to set a ground for our discussion. Please let us know what excites you the most about the intersection of technology and mining in Africa today.
Hi, thank you for that and your patience. Apologies to everybody. I seem to have a stable network where I am. So I've just turned off my camera in the hopes that at least it will be a bit more stable.
Okay.
So just to answer your question about what excites me about the intersection of technology and mining, really is how transformative it has been in terms of unlocking the potential in the sector. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you clearly now.
Hello?
Yes, Henry, we can hear you clearly.
Are you? Okay, sorry about that. I was just trying to say, for me, what stands out really has been how transformative technology has been to the sector, in terms of unlocking potential for the sector in Zambia. More importantly, on the side of efficiencies. Earlier when I was giving an example, sort of an introduction about the mining industry in Zambia, one thing that you could say contributed to the sector's downfall in the late 90s into 2000 was, lack of efficiencies. A lot of the technology and the mining methods that were being applied at the time had been obsolete. We simply failed to move with the world in terms of developing our mining assets and investing in new technologies as well as new methods of extracting these minerals. This also extended to the value chain as well, into the kind of suppliers, because obviously the suppliers feed into what the mines want. And or the industry is not evolving, capacity in the value chain as well tends to lag behind. Also, we're seeing this in areas of exploration as well. Exploration techniques evolved over the years. This was able to allow new discoveries to happen maybe in particular shorter periods of time. Technologies and aspects such as remote sensing from environmental perspective, where we're able to effectively monitor disposal of waste as well as tailings dams. Also, in other jurisdictions, we also have seen developments in areas such as blockchain, as ways of payment and investing in some of these raw materials. So for me, I would say that is what stands out.
All right, thank you so much. I think you highlighted quite a lot: exploration technique, increase in efficiency along the value chain and in the industry in general, remote sensing, also from an environmental perspective, blockchain technology as ways of payment and investing. So I hope all the startups and potential startups that are in the mining sector here today are keeping their ears open for these opportunities. Thank you so much, Henry. So in keeping these opportunities in mind, let's now look at some pressing industry challenges. So moving on to you, Mulumba, from your high-level perspective, what is one challenge in the mining sector that technology is best positioned to solve right now in the current state of the industry?
Thank you. I think to sort of ride on what Henry just mentioned, right? The challenge isn't a scarcity of minerals, it's efficiency, and tech that boosts productivity in the face of declining ore grades is the real unlock for industry, right? So for me, the single biggest challenge is productivity in the face of declining ore grades. Mines are deeper, ore is leaner, and obviously costs are rising. Some of the conversations that I was privy to be a part of this past week are that, I think to Henry's point, a lot of mining entities and maybe mining jurisdictions didn't necessarily invest in new technology or new mining methods. And this is the reason why you're seeing a huge amount of, let's say, offtake is being done by the Chinese. And also a lot of that mining as well is being done by the Chinese for a lot of resources, right? Because the Chinese actually invested in some of the technologies that we're seeing brought to bear when it comes to mine development, they've also managed to shorten the time, which is where I think a lot of mining entities would obviously also want to start seeing some form of innovation, right? So the technologies that can detect, extract, and process more efficiently, as Henry also mentioned, AI-based exploration or sorting, obviously using things like blockchain, automation. Those are the real game changers that you then likely see a lot of mine industry players gravitating towards. If we can solve for that productivity, then we can unlock both competitiveness as well as sustainability.
All right, thank you so much for highlighting those. Very important as well for the sector, and good to know that at least with some of the startups we've heard for and we've worked with, they are thinking in the right direction. So that is good to know. Okay, so I see Henry has dropped off again, but that's no problem. Okay, and he's back really quickly. Thank you. Henry, are you with us?
Hi. I
Okay.
think,
All right. All right. Are you able to hear me clearly? Okay. All right. Okay. No problem. Lumbo, I think we'll stick with you. And so let's get a bit more specific about how large asset holders consider startup solutions now that we've kind of set the stage and kind of given a broad overview. So from your perspective, when a large asset holder considers adopting a new technology from a startup, what does that internal conversation sound like? So we're flies on the wall in the boardroom or wherever you have your meetings. What do those conversations sound like?
Sure. And I think you'll probably likely hear this from a lot of mining entities. And I'd like to obviously also get Henry's view on this. But I think beyond ROI, the first question that is always going to be asked is, does this sort of solution integrate seamlessly with existing systems? Right? I know a propensity a lot of times for startups is to develop a solution, all on their own in their labs or in their basements, and then come out to market and say, "Hey, does this thing fit with what your guys are working on already?" And I think we had some of those conversations as well during the MineTech Hub of telling the startups actually go and talk to their customers, right? It's only through those conversations with the customers that you start to identify the real pain points that mining entities have, right? Some of the other questions that are obviously being asked are, does this solution improve safety or ESG compliance, for instance? Can it be scaled across multiple operations? Sometimes we see a solution that solves a problem, but not necessarily the problem that or the challenge that the mining industry will have. So it may solve a problem for a particular entity, but is it something that can be scaled out to other operations? And is it something that other mining operations can also adopt? Who owns the data and how secure is it, right? And critically, can local talent be trained to support it, right? One of the things that I think I'd like to push for, obviously, is like local talent starts to be trained and capacitated in the provision of some of these solutions, right? Because for a long time, Zambia has been a mining jurisdiction for over 100 years, right? We've been mining copper probably as Zambians maybe for another 60 plus of those years. But again, we've also got a lot of Zambian talent that is working in global jurisdictions and running mines. And I'd like to see a lot more of that being done here at home as well, where local Zambians, and also in any jurisdiction that you can think of, right? You're seeing this shift in Mali, you're seeing this shift in Guinea, you're seeing this shift in DRC, where the governments are also saying, look, we would like to have a more equitable stake of our mineral resource wealth. And one of the ways that you can do that is through having local talent as well, capacitated to be able to deliver some of that, right? So in the end, ROI does matter, but also long-term resilience, risk allocation, and strategic alignment matter more. And I think the more that startups can address some of these issues as they proffer solutions to the industry, the better it will be for them to actually find investors within the industry to take up some of their solutions.
Thank you so much. That was really, really helpful and absolutely something that we always echo and also try to push for startups or founders to do is talk to your customers, right? Over and over again. This is something that just never stops and it's an ongoing activity. I think it does help, even from a design thinking principle, empathizing with those people that are going to be using your product or your service. So really, really important. And we will get down a bit, in the further questions on how do we facilitate these, because another thing that we've also heard from startups is how difficult it is to actually, talk to people in mining entities, who to talk to. You need to know someone who knows someone. So really excited to actually get to that part of the question. So I will stay with you before I move on to Henry. And so how can startups then best articulate their value to a major corporation that's juggling multiple priorities and long-term goals? What are some of the things that I would say maybe top 3 things that they need to mention, to kind of catch that attention?
Sure, sure. So I think the best way to anchor your solution is to the mine's P&L, right? It's profit and loss. And if you can show how your technology reduces things like downtime, lowers costs per ton, improves recovery, or enhances safety metrics, you cut through the noise, right? And you will be that needle in the haystack that a lot of the mining entities are looking for. I think speaking the operator's language is also very key, right? Talk KPIs, payback periods, compliance, rather than as most tech founders like to do, rather than speak in abstract tech promises, speak the miner's language, right? Go and talk to them and actually understand what it is that they want. And I think if you can tie your tech directly to the mine's P&L, whether it's lowering costs per ton or boosting recovery, you'll win attention every time. Because I think that's one of the things that they're looking and actually paying a lot of attention to these days, especially given a lot of the discussions around ESG as well as sustainability of mining operations.
All right, thank you so much. And just to wrap up, again, staying with the strategic overview, is there an example that you could give us to make this a bit more concrete? Is there an example of a technology that was successfully integrated into a mining operation? And what made that partnership work? To give a bit of hope to the startups to actually show that something would work out.
Yeah, look, I think as Henry highlighted earlier, right, a lot of the mines are also looking to utilize technology to improve their operations. And you're seeing them deploying solutions such as blockchain for tracking and tracing of whether it be the metals. There are platforms that some of the mining entities also use, especially when it comes to, for instance, if they're working with small scale and artisanal miners. I know there are a couple of startups within the tech hub, the MineTech Hub, that are also operating with small scale and artisanal miners. And in particular for jurisdictions such as Zambia and I mean, South Africa has had that for a very long time. Zambia, South Africa, DRC, just to name a few jurisdictions that have to deal with small scale and artisanal miners. If you can find solutions as well that work in terms of improving the provenance, right, of the processes that they're, deploying for the mine activity that they're doing. Zambia right now has a gold rush. I think it's not a secret. But you're also finding that a lot of these small scale artisanal miners are also working with very rudimentary tools. But if you can find or build solutions that can help them formalize, right? That also then starts to help the broader sort of conversation in a mining jurisdiction and how we can improve the use of technology. It could be in registration, it could be in blockchain for tracing and tracking. It could be on, tracking ESG metrics for an ASM operation all the way up to a large scale mine. So I think you're seeing some of these deployments happening. There's IoT as well that has become quite prevalent in the mining sector. And IoT is obviously being used for a lot of things like monitoring of machinery, right? If you want to talk about digital twinning, where you create effectively a twin of a mine asset or a mine operation digitally, and everything that happens underground is being traced and tracked digitally. That's another way that you're seeing some of these technology solutions being deployed in the sector. So I think there's a lot of exciting times ahead for the sector. And if we can get a lot more African startups really to look at the sector, I believe they'll find opportunities for proffering solutions to the sector.
Yeah, thank you so much for highlighting those, and especially also touching on the small scale miners and artisanal miners. I think we do have 2 startups in the MineTech program, acceleration program, that are focusing on those. I know everybody rushes to the big guys, but there's actually so much opportunity as well, even from a small scale perspective. So thank you for highlighting that. Okay, so we'll now transition to Henry. It's your turn to take the stage now, and we'll switch to an investor lens and the signals that matter for startups. So my first question for you is, when a MineTech startup's pitch deck lands on your desk, okay, what are the first 3 things you look for, and what are the red flags?
Hi, and thank you for that question. I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
Yes. So really, what one would look for in a pitch deck that would land on my desk are mainly 3 things. I think, like Mulumba said earlier, this pitch has to show that it's there to solve a problem, because one key area that mines are constantly looking to is optimization and how to improve existing processes. So, how do I increase production or maintain constant production whilst keeping a keen eye on my costs and maintaining those? So you find that there are constantly these projects that are looking to find solutions to existing problems, and how do you optimize basically your existing infrastructure. So I want to know what this solution or what this pitch is there to solve, and is it really solving the challenge that I have, and is it doing that at a cost efficient manner. Secondly, what I'd want to see is how scalable this technology is. Can it be rolled out throughout all my operations, or is it something that just benefits one sector of my operations? So is it scalable, and how different is it from what I have already? What the startup has a high mountain to climb, in that they would have to convince this potential customer that you need to you need to sort of do away or phase out the current technology equipment that you have. And mind you, they would have spent significant amounts of capital in their already existing infrastructure, and try to convince them to take up this new technology, which might cost them quite significantly in terms of rolling it out through the operations. So for me, that's the second one is partly the difficult part. And then thirdly, I'd like to know what's the capability of this outfit that's pitching this. How experienced are they? What are their abilities? And most importantly, support after they provide this technology or this equipment. Would they be readily available to support me at moment's notice? Mining is quite on top of being capital intensive, it's quite demanding. So, you have to meet your targets. You cannot afford for production to come to a halt. So if this technology you've supplied to me has an issue at moment's notice, I need to know that you'll be able to be on site, in the shortest possible time. So I'd say those are the 3 key issues. What problems it's solving, scalability, and how does it improve, or how better is it than what I already have, and then also the capability of the supplier, and can you consistently be there for me and provide these. In terms of red flags, some of the red flags that perhaps would come to mind, is it relevant really for my operation? Is it a nice to have or a need to have? And then also, personally coming from a financial background, does it make financial sense? Are the numbers being provided realistic? Is it something that is sellable, and do they make sense, most importantly? Yeah, because we can all make projections, but what's the story behind them, and how realistic are those projections? So, and then maybe lastly, is it something that is, from a regulatory perspective, is it acceptable? Is it something we can apply? If, for example, you are proposing a new chemical treatment in the process, are these chemicals allowed in Zambia? Are they not restricted? How easy would it be to source those? So just to give an example there. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. Thank you. Something that has stood out really, I think second or third time has been mentioned in this conversation, is scalability and being able to, to roll it out across multiple operations, and that being very, very important. And that really requires a deep understanding of the sector, but also taking a value chain approach when thinking about providing any products or services for the industry. So I think that's very, very also important for startups to understand. Okay, so once the startup clears that bar, so they're in, how do you balance the high risk, high reward nature of startup investments against the stable traditional mining assets? And this question is for you, Henry. We're still on.
Okay, thank you for that. Maybe I will sort of use my sort of work practical examples to sort of answer this. That might be the easiest way. So obviously you'd find that our portfolio, or what you see is that our portfolio is mainly concentrated around traditional sort of legacy mining assets that we, I would say, inherited from the old ZCCM, Zambia Consolidated Copper Mines. And these obviously are the assets that give us that anchor in terms of our portfolio, and they are the main contributors, I think, to the income that we recognize, as well as our asset base, essentially. But what you do see is that from a strategic point of view, there has been a push to sort of diversify from these traditional type of investments, and so we've been looking outwards to see how we could grow our portfolio in other areas that we're not, I'd say, concentrated before. And this is coming in the form of obviously looking at other minerals. If you look at most of these legacy assets, we have a base metal, mostly concentrated around base metals. But in recent years, we've been looking to move into the gold space. We've also looked at other minerals such as manganese, amethyst, and gemstones, just to name a few. So whilst the legacy assets do provide us with that stability and somewhat predictable returns, we do actively want to pursue these other areas that obviously, one, would offer us diversification, but also gives us access into greenfield projects that hopefully we can develop into your next Kansanshi and so on. And such examples perhaps would be also what we've recently done with Mingomba, where whereas we have our legacy portfolio, we are still actively looking to invest in new projects, be it base metals, precious metals, or gemstones. And so we do, this is just to speak to, startups and how we look to move away from sort of the more mature assets to what we're doing with upcoming projects and assets. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you. So let's try to then pressure test some of these with some real life scenarios. And this goes to both of you, but obviously from differing perspectives, especially because at least from a startup perspective, one thing that we've noticed even just implementing this program is how still very raw and new this sector is for startups, and the collaboration between startups and already existing mining entities. So I'll give you a scenario, and I'd like to hear from both perspectives how you would approach it. So the scenario is a startup has a brilliant technology, but lacks track record, which is the case for a lot of startups, right? So Mulumba, from your perspective, how do you convince internal stakeholders to take a chance on an unproven solution with potential long-term promise?
Thank you for that question. I think as Henry has highlighted, right? The thing about mining is that it's one, capital intensive. So any sort of solutions that are being proposed would have to look at quite a number of different factors, right? So in a startup approaching internal stakeholders, for us, obviously we'd need to have a structured de-risking path, right? What does that mean? That means that maybe the startup has a limited scope pilot of sorts, right? Maybe with milestone-based payments that they can propose, that if you attain or achieve a certain milestone, then funding is released in that regard, or you can raise capital from all manner of sources as well. I had a conversation earlier, I think in the Timbuktu Hub sessions, where I was asking one of the startup founders, what's their baseline data? What does their baseline data look like, right? If you have baseline data that you can measure outcomes on, that becomes a plus for you, because then you have something that we are using to compare with versus what you're saying the mine operation should be able to achieve or attain post implementation of your solution. Have maybe a risk sharing mechanism as well, like guarantees and insurance. And I know this is language that a lot of startups won't particularly like to hear, but just the fact of some of the solutions that you may propose in a mining operation will have some form of there's an element of risk to human beings and lives, right? Real life sort of risk, because if a solution is being proffered to say it can detect gases underground, but you haven't tested your solution thoroughly, or whether or not it can actually communicate underground, that becomes obviously a huge risk for a mine entity to undertake. And I think, as Henry also highlighted, there are also regulatory challenges and issues that you have to address before you deploy a solution in the mining sector. So how is that, solution that the startup is providing, how does that then tie into some of these aspects? And the message really will be that we're not betting the mine. We're running a controlled experiment with upside potential. And if you can design, for a 90-day proof of value, you can move internal stakeholders from skepticism perhaps to sponsorship. But again, you'd have to address quite a number of key factors, I think, that are also very relevant to the mining sector. Yeah, I see there's a question that's popped up in the webinar.
Yes. Okay. So let's hear from Henry, and then we'll go back to the question. We're actually almost done with this, and we'll start.
Okay.
So thank you so much, Philip, for kicking us off with the questions. For those of you on Facebook, YouTube, and even here on the Zoom call, please feel free to already start posting your questions. We are getting closer to the end of the panel section, and we'll be opening up the Q&A session in the next few minutes. So Henry, from your perspective, how do you quantify the risk and potential return? So we're looking at the same scenario. A startup has a brilliant technology but lacks a track record. How do you quantify the risk and the potential return?
I suppose, okay, yeah, that's a very difficult question, but I'll give it an attempt. So I think definitely one key aspect would be, how extensively you've tested your technology. So where, and I know this is usually difficult for a startup, but where have you applied this technology, and most importantly, in real life conditions? And in as much as this is difficult, one way I'd probably suggest startups would look into is to have interactions with potential end users of these applications, and in a way that helps you to develop some kind of track record and proof of concept in what you're trying to roll out. Because ultimately, if you understand the value chain well, these end users tend to be, just at the end users. So if you could interact with some of these industry professionals who use such, or who would be interested in such technology on a day-to-day basis, that would be a good way to start, because then in a way you're getting endorsements, and within these institutions where these people practice, they could once they obviously are confident with what you're laying out or what you're offering, could potentially be your first point of call in terms of rolling this out or getting your initial orders. And obviously applicability of the technology that you're proposing as well. So going back to what I said earlier, how relevant is what you're proposing to the company you're talking to, and that I think will determine how interested they would be in what you're rolling out. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Henry, for taking a jab at that question. So we would like to open the audience Q&A now, but before we go, I'd like for us to just kind of leave a bit of practical advice for the startups. So I think earlier as people were coming in, I just asked people to maybe just put down, some relevant projects or interesting MineTech projects they're working on, or startups. And I think one thing that's very key, and that's been mentioned here several times, is, how important it is for startups to talk to their potential customers, to really empathize with them, to get to know the industry deeply, to take a value chain approach to ensure that also their solutions are scalable, practical, and actually relevant for the sector. But when it comes to actually approaching these entities, what is some practical advice that you could give for startups? Because I think even throughout the program, in terms of trying to link startups with mining entities, one thing we ask is, okay, who do you want to talk to? And the immediate thing is that everybody always points to the CEO, right? And we know that the CEO is not necessarily the best person. So what practical advice would you give a startup that has an idea or has a project or a technology, a product, a service, and they want to approach a mining entity? Who do they talk to? What do they do? I'm leaving this as an open question so that you can answer it from your perspective. What would you do? The space. Who would you talk to? How would you approach? Is it via email? Is it going there physically? So how do we break that barrier, right, to increase the chances of success, but also that the startups can actually test these products and services that they want to get onto the market? So I will start with Mulumba, and then we'll close with Henry, and then we'll open up the Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you for that question. Let me speak firstly for Zambia, and this can also be applied, I believe, to other jurisdictions on the continent. if you look at what's happening right now in the industry, there's a lot of interest in mining, obviously with the huge drive towards critical minerals as well as the energy transition. If you look at Zambia, I think we've just last week we had the mining in Saka, the second annual mining in Saka happening in Lusaka. That obviously attracted a lot of mining executives as well as industry players. And I think for startups, it's important that you also align yourselves with sort of industry events, right? That are happening in whatever jurisdiction that you're in. Because there you will find it easier to access a number of mining executives and operators in one place, and you can have and pick up conversations with them on what your idea is. But then also maybe to sort of come into some of those fora a little more prepared than just showing up with a pitch. I think it's also important that you come to the table with a pilot-ready data room. And I know for the MineTech Hub, this is something that you're also emphasizing to a lot of the startups to prepare for, right? That they need to have a data room that actually has all the relevant documentation in it, right? That means you've quantified the problem, you've done a pilot design. Maybe you may not necessarily have started the pilot itself, but at least you should have designed something. You should have quantified at least baseline versus projected outcomes. And also, if you can also have a few letters of intent, those, believe you me, go a long way, especially if you're trying to attract investment or interest from especially corporate players, right? If you can hand an investor or corporate partner a package that says, here's the business case, here's the risk mitigation, here's how we measure return on investment, you'll be far ahead of more than 90% of the startups that actually end up pitching to some of these players. So I think it's important as well that as startups are approaching some of these mine execs or operators, that they come also prepared to not just show up with a pitch deck, but also show that you've done your homework. You've actually understood the area, the particular area you're looking to obviously profile a solution into, right? Because that becomes quite important, obviously, for the mining execs. I think as we've highlighted throughout this conversation, they're looking at their P&L, right? Margins in some of these vectors are quite thin. So whatever solution that you're providing should be able to improve their P&L for them. And I think if you can speak to that, you'll be speaking a language that they can actually then listen to. And again, I can't emphasize this enough, but try and attend as many industry events as you can. Find out what industry events are happening in your jurisdiction, because you will find everyone within that place, and try and sift through and see which ones obviously attract some of the players you want to talk to. A lot of these events also usually publicize who's going to be speaking, what panels are going to be discussed at such events. And I think it'll be very key and important for any startup really that's serious about approaching the mining industry to then start to look at that. Secondly, a lot of countries also have mining chambers of commerce, right? Sorry, mining chambers, right? Chamber of mines that you can also approach. These are industry bodies that will have usually a president or chair that you can approach, and then they can introduce you to all of the potential mining players that you'd want to talk to. And a lot of these sort of jurisdictions that have heavy mining presence within their borders will have a mining chamber that you can obviously approach and find out who the players are. And it's not just, and remember, mining is not just the mining or extraction of minerals, right? It's a whole value chain. You're talking transport and logistics. You're talking about, exploration, and you're talking about sampling and a whole bunch of other sort of areas that you can look to provide innovative solutions into. Yeah.
Thank you, Mulumba, for that very, very practical advice. And I really hope that's given a bit of perspective as well from the startups, on where to start from, because I know that's definitely a sticky one. So Henry, from your perspective, could you please share some very practical advice on what steps, right? What does a startup do in terms of approaching mining entities, to provide a product, a service? Where do they start from?
Thank you for that. For me, I would say where the key place to start is doing a lot of doing research on your potential customers. Um, I think one pitfall that maybe some tech startups tend to make is that they'll focus so much in developing this technology or solution, but how applicable is it for the environment that you're trying to deploy this in? Um, so I'd say that one needs to really understand who my potential clients are. Is my technology, for example, only applicable to underground mines versus open cast mines? What are the characteristics of these potential customers? And all this really leads to what is the specific challenge that that particular mine could face? Because from that perspective, then you're able to design or roll out something that is applicable, or if you flip that around, you would save yourself time approaching a client who actually may have no use for what you've spent years developing. So it's really key to undertake that research. Um, Understand what critical issues are they facing. For example, what you'd find with our underground mines now, with them with ore grades depleting, a lot of them are going a lot deeper. So one of some of the issues that they're facing is on the water management side. That's become quite a significant cost and issue that they're facing. And two, on the ventilation side, as you go deeper, you find that it gets a lot hotter, and you need a lot of solutions around how you'd make ventilation more efficient. So whereas that would be applicable for underground mines, if you go to, let's say, Kansanshi, and you propose, let's say, ventilation technology or solution, they'll look at you and say, well, this has got no place in our operation. So really what I was trying to say is that in as much as we spend a lot of time and resources in developing these solutions, applicability is quite key. And I think that then helps you to narrow down which particular customers you need to approach and how much effort you put in approaching them. Beyond that, going back to what I had said in the previous question as well, is interaction with the end users. From my experience, in a lot of these mining operations, in as much as the top management make all the decisions and obviously are key in the big decision making. When it comes down to the day-to-day operations, are you familiar with the different sections of the operation, and who are these people? Are they do they understand or appreciate what you're trying to roll out and why it would be useful for them? And through that channel, then it feeds up into the upper decision making groups, who then rely on recommendations from these sort of on the ground, your superintendents and the end users and so on. So for me, I think it's key, and a lot of that also comes down to relationship management, and from the startup side. Possibly, you'd also need to be ready to deploy a lot of some of these solutions on a pilot basis, because the end user needs to be able to see that this actually works. So that might require a bit more investment from your end, whether it's remote sensing equipment. Are you able to set up one unit just to on a 1-2 months trial basis, maybe free of charge, for them to be able to see the data and be able to build a case around that. So just some ideas around how you could go about some of these challenges. Thanks.
All right, thank you so much, Mulumba. Thank you so much, Henry, for those very, very interesting insights, and finishing with very practical steps on how startups can approach mining entities with their products, with their solutions. So we do have a few questions here. So I've got some questions in the chat and also through the Q&A mechanism here on Zoom. So I'll start with the first question here from Philip Kamungoma, and that says, what level of field testing or certification is required before a MineTech solution can be commercially viable? So I will leave that open. Whoever would like to jump in first, please go ahead. Yes.
I'll defer that to Henry since he's a lot closer to the mining entities than I am.
Okay, so Henry, floor is yours. What level of field testing or certification is required before a MineTech solution can be commercially viable?
I'd say it would probably vary depending on what kind of tech solution it is, because the mining operation being quite vast, safety is quite key across the board. So what I would say is that with some of these solutions that border on critical safety issues, those tend to be subject to regulatory oversight as well. So you might need to undertake a certain level of working hours or whatever might be applicable for you to be able to satisfy the regulator that this technology is safe for deployment, because that regulatory sort of clear technology is
Henry, I think we've lost you in case you can hear me. Okay, all right, okay. Okay, so I think I will, I hope we did hear at least the beginning of what he shared, and once he comes back, he can finish off. But I'd like to move on to the next question, which is a question that was submitted on Facebook from Elijah. And it goes, how can young innovators from countries like Zambia get involved in the Timbuktu program or benefit from its opportunities? Okay, so I will give a very broad, I guess that question is for me, Elijah. So the program is actually running. So we're running the first cohort and it's coming to an end in the next 2 months. So Elijah, I would encourage you to just keep up with social media, the UNDP pages, and through those avenues will be, UNDP will be able to make any announcements on what is going to happen next, when the next cohort will be taking place. But for now, we are winding up with the first cohort, and you can follow any updates as well on Bongo Hive social media pages, the UNDP pages, UNDP Zambia pages as well. So I think that's I'll leave that there for now until we do get more information on when the next cohort will be kicking off. So I will move on to the next question, which is, let me go to the Q&A first before I tackle that one in the chat. So we've got one from here from Walu Kasumu. With the local content bill now in effect, how can a local startup position itself to become a verified supplier or solution provider to mining companies?
Okay, maybe I can answer some of that question. I know a lot of it, all the mining entities always publish, I think, a call for companies to register with them as suppliers, probably at the end or the beginning of the year. A lot of those are also published in the newspapers, but again, don't just rely on that, right? If need be, go to some of these mining entities, call them up, email them. I think there's several ways that you can get a hold of some of their procurement departments to also understand things. In Zambia, for instance, we have what's called EGP, which is the electronic government procurement platform. Now, if only for entities that are obviously related to government, you will find tenders posted there in terms of supplier registration and the like. So it's getting yourself I think, involved and searching for some of those particular platforms that are available to people that are looking to supply into several operations. I'd like to believe that's one of the ways that you can go about it.
All right, thank you, Mulumba. And for a follow-up question from the same person, how can startups gain insider access or collaborate with mining engineers to better understand their daily pain points?
I think since he specifically pointed out mining engineers, I know there's the Engineers Institute of Zambia, EIZ. That's one of the bodies, I think, professional bodies that you can approach and have them introduce you, or maybe also just follow any sessions that they may hold for mining engineers. There may be a specific sort of body or professional body for mining engineers themselves who you can approach and find out from them. I think as we've highlighted in the conversation, it's very important that you talk to your end users and find out what their pain points are. And some of these sort of professional bodies are one of the ways and pathways that you can use to get access to some of these people.
All right, thank you. So Mulumba, you are the only panelist that we have for now, so all the questions will be directed at you. This is the last one that we have, so for anyone that still has questions, we still got about 15 minutes to the end of this session, so please continue to post your questions, whether in the chat here on Zoom, on YouTube, on Facebook, wherever you're joining us from, and we'll be able to answer them live here. So the next question here is, what sort of metrics are applied on university students that have innovative software solutions for a mine before they're taken on, considering a student likely has little to no physical industry experience, but may be very proficient with software that might save the mine millions. So in short, the question is summarized, does it matter if the innovator is a student?
Well, let me be careful about how I answer that question. Look, even as you are a student and you have found maybe or have an innovative solution, try and also get, it could be advisors or an advisory board, for instance, made up of industry professionals who you can consult in terms of whether the solution that you've actually come up with has any viability in the industry, right? That's I think the general advice I would give to anyone who's looking to provide solutions to highly regulated industries. It's important that you also have, I think, advisory boards that can provide you with insights, as well as the ability to open doors for you, right? It's not just about the solution that you have. How credible is the solution that you have, and who else do you have within the industry who can maybe back that solution that you're providing and perhaps even open up more doors for you as well, in terms of getting access to industry.
All right, thank you so much. So Mulenga, that is your question answered. Next question here is, suppose a small startup has been mining geographical and geological data across the country. Can a mine essentially buy this perfectly centralized data?
Listen, you're competing against an industry that has a lot of resources at its disposal. You may not necessarily be the only one that has that geophysical data or geographical data that you've mined. You're probably mining it from third-party sources. They're mining it maybe from actual data that they've gone out and carpeted on the ground. But suffice to say, there are companies that could look at such data and probably buy it off of you. But again, I think it warrants that you have a conversation with people and just to sort of understand what exactly you have in your possession and what you can actually provide.
All right, thank you. I can see we've got Henry back on the call. Welcome back. So here from an anonymous attendee, and the question is, do mines have their own data servers or they pay to use cloud space? Is there an interest in data farms?
Maybe I'll take a stab at this and then let Henry jump in as well. Listen, technology and the use of data centers is going to become quite critical in the mining sector. I'm sure you've heard the headlines of cobalt metals and the work that they're doing on Mingomba mine, for instance, where they're utilizing AI to maybe map out the ore body and also just analyze and understand the data that was already in place and in ZCCM's archives. So data centers, yes, will become quite critical. I mean, this is the reason why you have Jeff Bezos, whose company in Amazon has Amazon Web Services backing a Mingomba mine, for instance. Bill Gates as well is also backing Mingomba mine in that regard, in the cobalt operation, right? So you can already see that data and also geophysical data. Right now, there's a geophysical data studies that are going on in country that will require that data to sit somewhere and be read or passed through servers. And obviously, AI is going to be a critical component of understanding a lot of that data. So I'd like to believe that, yes, mines and mine operations are certainly going to be looking at data farms and data centers to process a lot of their data because of just the application of technology that's happening across the industry and the value chain. Henry, I don't know if you have anything as well on that front in terms of what you're seeing in your space.
Thank you, and sorry about that again. Where I am, the network does not seem to be stable. But I think well put by Mulumba. Definitely, that is something that I think, if not already, the mines would be quite interested in, simply because given the extent of mining operations, whether it's from the exploration side, daily mining production, processing data, and all of that, this is information that the mine needs to be able to receive in real time, process, and ultimately store, so that in future they will be able to go back and at a click of at a button retrieve records from 5, 10, 15 years ago. And if you look where we're coming from, a lot of the mines previously would keep this data in hard copy. If you were to visit any of the operations, you find that they have rooms and warehouses just full of old files, whether it's paperwork or drill cores, and so on. So technology becomes these data rooms and data farms become important in that all this information could be digitized and obviously takes up less space and it's a more efficient way. So just to add on what Mulumba said, which I completely agree with. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Our next question here again is centered around the Timbuktu program. So startups often struggle to gain the trust of big mining companies that stick with established vendors. How is Timbuktu helping bridge that gap? So I think at a high level, I can highlight a couple of things that the program does help with. So one, it helps you to understand the industry a bit better so that your solutions, your products, your services are more aligned to the actual needs in the sector. So, hence this webinar where you're, getting information on better understanding on how you can position yourself to increase your chances of success. The program also takes you through acceleration, incubation, different programs on supporting you to better develop your business model, understand the problem you're solving, refine the problem, and also your own business and your solution as well. There are also introductions as well to potential partners. But I think, as it has been mentioned, in this webinar, is we can do all of that. We can put you in front of these partners. But if your solution is not scalable, if it's not addressing an actual problem in the mining sector, if there's no, return on investment, and these are all things that are dependent on you, not necessarily the fact that you've got a connection, to a mining entity, right? You could be placed in front of a mining entity and still not and they will still not trust you. And this is not based off of the fact that you are, a small startup, but it's just because you're not solving a problem that they actually have. So yes, the Timbuktu program is helping to bridge that gap in various ways. And one thing as well that it also helps you to do is to get you in front of potential customers and clients, so that you can actually talk to your clients. So one key activity that was done in the program across 5 weeks is we gave the startups and we told them they had a goal to talk to a minimum of 10 clients in 5 weeks, right? So we can't do that for you because that's your business. So we if there were any introductions that needed to be made, we would make those introductions as best as we could. We gave them the tools on how to talk to clients, what to say, what questions to ask, but they had to go out there and actually do the work. So yeah, so this is just some of the ways that the program helps to build that gap. But as we've heard here, the onus is also on you as a startup to also do your homework. So thank you for that question, Walukas Samu. All right, so another question from an anonymous attendee. Thank you for that answer. Apart from the focus of production, is there also a huge interest in social corporate responsibility solutions? Yeah, Mulumba, Henry, whoever would like to start on that one.
Sure. Absolutely. I mean, a lot of mines have to operate in areas where they have to obtain what's called a social license, effectively, for them to operate there, right? Because they're operating in quite rural areas. They also have to employ some people that are obviously within those particular areas themselves. They bring about quite a lot of development into some remote parts of certain countries. So because of that, and also because of the ESG imperative as well, there's obviously a huge focus as well on social responsibility, especially the S, obviously, in ESG, right? In answering your question. So yes, there is a consideration for that, and it's not just focused on production, because for the mine entities to really effectively operate in some of these areas, they have to really operate with a social license, and that's usually granted to them because of some of the activities that they undertake, whether it's building schools, helping with infrastructure development in some of these areas, or also then providing employment to a number of people that live in some of the areas that they operate in. But I also have Henry as well chime in on that.
Hi, sorry, could you just retrace on that question? I seem to have dropped off again.
Yes, sure. So the question is, apart from the focus of production, is there also a huge interest in social corporate responsibility solutions?
Yes, completely. There's a lot of, I think the area of social license and corporate social responsibility is one of the, I think, the critical areas that any mining operation needs to look at in Zambia. I think in this day and age, there's no mining operation that can call itself successful without having a positive social license. I think not only mining operations have been interrupted simply because the mine lost that social license, and you see, and this is something that some of the publicly listed entities do. Hi,
Hi, Henry.
sorry. Think I dropped off again. So I was saying, you'll see that this is the CSR side is in a lot of these publicly listed mines that do disclose that information, in terms of how much they do spend on this CSR, and you'll note that it's quite a significant amount. And for any mining operation where you've invested significant amounts, you don't want to put all of that at risk because the community feels that you've not adequately given back to them, and they're not happy with how you're operating in their environment. So definitely, so as a result, there's a lot of opportunities there in that the mines do spend quite significant amounts into these communities. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Henry. There's another question here for you. And because we've got 3 minutes left, I think this will be our last question before we have, I'll just get Mariah back on the call to just give us a few announcements. So this one is, I heard ZC, and this is from an anonymous attendee. I heard ZCCM is making a system to help small-scale miners. Will that system be easier, accessible, or limited after a series of screening? I'm not sure if you understand the question, but yeah. So Henry,
Could you just repeat the last part? Sorry.
Okay, so will that system be easier and accessible or limited after a series of screening?
So regarding the work that is being done with artisanal miners, this essentially is being rolled out in specific areas. So it will be rolled out on the basis of, I think, current sort of artisanal small-scale miners who are already operating in some of these areas. So in a way, it will be somewhat limited to those within that geographical area, to be limited to those cooperatives who were initially registered and are given artisanal mining rights. However, the plan is to replicate this model in other areas where we think there's gold potential, where there have been discoveries. So it will be limited in a way, but as we roll it out in other areas, then we onboard more of these communities and these operators.
All right. Okay, so we've got one last question here from Loani Mubanga, and this will be the final question, I promise. Do we have precedents in Zambia of mines that are pushing boundaries when it comes to mining automation, aside from those affiliated with cobalt? Can you elaborate on some of these advancements if you're aware of them? So here to either Mulumba or Henry, please feel free to take the floor and answer the question.
Maybe I can come in before I lose network again.
Right.
Yeah, so I think one that stands out for me personally, I would say, is First Quantum Minerals operations in Zambia. I'll mention that as one, and I'll speak to another, which is non-ferrous copper mines, which is in Chambeshi. So for First Quantum, I think from the time most of their operations in Kansanshi have started, they've quite heavily invested in technology and increasing efficiencies in the operations. One such I think technology that comes to mind is their trackless system, which is a system they operate in their open pit mine. And this system has actually been recognized world over as quite a revolution in the open mining system. So just to explain it a bit, the system basically is fitted on their dump trucks. So for anyone who might appreciate what happens at Kansanshi, is that they have an open pit mine where they have these huge dump trucks, which carry hundreds of tons of ore at any given time. But what Kansanshi discovered is, as they went deeper, they were spending a lot of their diesel costs went up because the distances that they would have to, the gradients in terms of the steepness of the slopes and the distances increased. What they installed on the what they call ramps, where the trucks pass, is an electronic system that after a number of meters, there's sort of
equipment fitted on top of the dump truck, which hooks onto these power lines. And the trucks are designed in such a way that they're hybrid trucks. So they're designed in such a way that once it hooks onto this electric system, the diesel engine cuts off and it switches to electrical power. So what then happens is that with that electrical power, it's able to go up these ramps quicker, and obviously without using any diesel power. So that translates into quicker times to haul this material, as well as obviously lower costs when it comes to the diesel that they consume. Going to NFCA, one technology they've improved, that also stood out for me is these underground boomer machines. So these underground boomer machines essentially haul material from different sections, from the mining areas to the production areas. So what they've done is over time, they've introduced these manless boomers where these are being operated as far as 900 meters above the surface. So these don't need an actual driver to operate these machines. They are monitored by well-trained operators above surface who can navigate through the tunnels and deliver the material from where it's been mined to where it needs to go. So I thought this was quite a game changer because I think they were the first to implement this in Zambia, and it has translated into quite a number of efficiencies in that, firstly from a safety perspective, you have less men underground, and it does tend to be quicker because your operators are a lot fresher and a lot safer. So I would speak to those two.
All right. Thank you so much. This brings us to the end of our first webinar in a series of 3. So we will have, actually, I'll not preempt. I'll give the floor to Mariah to give those announcements. But I do just want to, before I leave the stage here, to just thank you, Mulumba. Thank you, Henry, so much for your time and for your very, very incredibly valuable insights. I think they've been very, very helpful, and I do hope that the startups and the participants that joined took notes. We will this webinar will be made available, and we will also probably make a blog article as well, just to really highlight the key insights that came out of this as well. Today's discussion has illuminated how startups can bridge the gap between innovation and investment, and how collaboration across industry, investors, and innovators can unlock the full potential of MineTech in Africa. So to our audience, thank you so much for joining us here on Zoom, on Facebook, and on YouTube. This is one of 3 sessions under the Timbuktu MineTech program, and we look forward to continuing this conversation as we strengthen the region's MineTech ecosystem. So Mariah, with that said, the floor is yours, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Momo, for moderating the session, first of all. And thank you so much, Mulumba and Henry, as well, for joining us and just taking some time to share your knowledge as well. I think before I make my announcements, I'm just going to point out some key things that I took note of during the discussion. So starting with Mulumba, you highlighted that AI-based technology is what the mining industry players are currently targeting. So as local startups, what are your solutions trying to solve? Are you speaking the miner's language? Are you tying your tech to the mine's profit and loss? And I think Henry also mentioned, when a pitch lands on his desk, what do they look for? So does your solution solve a problem that already exists? How does it improve existing processes and while maintaining costs? How scalable is your solution, and what makes it unique, and what makes it stand out as well? And just what is your capability? Are you willing to come through and give your insights and guidance when these players do call upon you? So thank you so much for sharing some of those insights with us. So like Momo said, this is the first session out of 3 webinars. So this one was dubbed Unlocking Investments, Navigating the African MineTech Funding Landscape. And the second webinar is scheduled for the 20th November, which is going to be From Pit to Port, AI, IoT, and Automation in Modern Mining Operations. But we'll definitely be able to keep you in the loop on our different social media platforms. And we do hope to see some of you people who have joined this session. We hope to see you in the coming sessions as well. So at this point, I can see that everybody has turned on their camera. I actually want to take a quick screenshot, if you don't mind. So big smiles. Okay, great. Sorry, thank you so much. And also for the audience, you will notice that there is a survey that's been shared to you in your email. So it's just a very quick survey. I know people don't like filling out surveys, but it will take less than 5 minutes just so that we know how to continue improving the sessions and, giving you great insights still. So at this point in time, Momo, I don't know if you have anything else to say before we close off the session? No? Okay, great. At this point in time, I can close off this session. I'll also leave my email in the chat just in case you want to be in touch. And thank you so much for joining, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening to everybody.